This is an update on the investigation into the 27th Street incident in Newton Division. Talking today is Chief Michel Moore, the chief of the LAPD. Also talking is Assistant Special Agent in Charge Michael Hoffman from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives from the Los Angeles Field Office. Also present here today is Assistant Chief Robert Marino from the Office of Special Operations from the LAPD, and also Commander David Kowalski, who is the Assistant Commanding Officer for the Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau. I present to you Chief Moore.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And first of all, good morning, everyone. I apologize for the heat, and I know it's quite hot out here with the COVID restrictions, though, and our efforts to try to abide by that, and at the same time provide you an in-person press conference and statements. I'm trying to strike that balance. So again, I appreciate your patience with that. Also, the remarks I'm about to make are lengthy, admittedly, and so just be prepared that they are going to go into a number of areas, including specific findings, preliminary findings by the ATF National Response Team. So I'm going to ask for your patience because it is going to go on for a bit, but I believe that over the course of that you'll find answers to many of your questions that you may have, and also allows me to have a framework from beginning to end, and then that'll help frame also what questions are still unanswered that you may have, and certainly we'll take questions in the aftermath of this. Let me first thank and give my appreciation to ATF Assistant Special Agent in Charge Michael Hoffman for being here today, and for being part of this ongoing investigation. This is an update on the information gathered in the aftermath of that catastrophic explosion that occurred on Wednesday evening, June 30th, in the 700 block of East 27th Street, when the department's bomb squad attempted to safely detonate some illegal explosives that were found among a large amount of illegal consumer fireworks. My remarks today, as I said earlier, will detail the event from its origin with information that's been previously reported, as well as update information gleaned over the course of this investigation completed to this point. Some of the information will update or incorrect earlier points of information that's been released. Additionally, this matter continues to be an investigation both by the ATF's National Response Team as well as the department's own internal investigation of the actions taken during this incident. I'm also going to reference specific steps taken to improve the safety of the community, as well as our own personnel placed in harm's way in attempting to deal with very dangerous circumstances involving explosive material. Given the substantial amount of information gathered at this point and actions taken, I believe today is an appropriate juncture to provide this update while cautioning that there remains a number of unanswered questions. But before proceeding any further with this briefing, I want to personally express my apologies to every resident, business operator, and customer that was traumatically impacted by this incident. Whether personally injured, as were 17 community members, or the property loss incurred by owners of the 13 businesses, 22 residential properties, and 37 vehicles that have been damaged or destroyed, I'm sorry that this occurred. Additionally, I acknowledge that there are many more individuals traumatized by the explosion itself. I'm also grateful that this incident did not result in any loss of life, including the countless community members who were senselessly exposed to the clear and present danger created by the alleged criminal actions of Mr. Arturo Ceja when he chose to store more than 16 tons of fireworks on illegal explosives at his house on a residential street. I'm also thankful that our police and fire personnel who were on scene and I believe acting in good faith to safely remove the consumer fireworks from the location, as well as render safe the illegal explosives, their actions were based on years of training and experience in dealing with explosive materials, and I'm grateful that they survived. Lastly, while these investigations are not complete, based on the information gleaned by the interviews completed, as well as in consultation with other bomb squad operations here locally as well as across the country, we have taken significant steps to strengthen operating protocols, documentation, oversight of any destruction of fireworks or other explosive materials in this city. And more work remains in this aspect of this investigation. Now, on June 30th at 8:45 in the morning, Newton area uniform officers responded to a radio call. It was of an anonymous community member regarding illegal fireworks being stored in the rear yard under a brown tarp and sold from the alley of 716 East 27th Street. Officers responded to the location where they obtained consent to search from the resident and observed a large cache of packaged illegal consumer fireworks in their rear yard. At 9:45 that morning, LAPD bomb squad was contacted and responded to the scene, along with a local ATF agent. While initial reports estimated there was approximately 3,000 to 5,000 pounds of packaged fireworks, it was later determined that the actual amount seized to be more than 32 pounds gross weight of consumer fireworks. Over the course of the next 10 hours, the bomb squad formulated and implemented a plan to safely remove and transport from the scene the illegal fireworks, while working in a unified command with LA City Fire. The consumer fireworks were placed on pallets and transferred into 3 box trucks and an LA Fire Department 50-foot container trailer and transported to an interim storage facility. Major Crime Division investigative personnel also responded to conduct a criminal investigation assisted by an ATF agent as information was developed that the fireworks had been purchased in Nevada and transported to the 27th Street location to be illegally sold. During the removal process of the packaged consumer fireworks, the bomb squad located a significant quantity of illegal explosives in various locations at the residence. In their examination of the devices, some were found to be leaking material. The bomb squad determined that these could not be safely transported from the scene due to their condition. This is consistent with the department's established operating protocols. The LAPD bomb squad, with the approval of the Newton Area Incident Commander, attempted to render them safe through the use of the department's Total Containment Vessel, known as a TCV, while at the scene. Included in the safety plan was a structured evacuation plan for the immediate neighborhood. Over the course of the day, there were 3 phases of Over the course of the day, there were 3 phases of evacuations that took place. During initial preparation for the removal of the consumer fireworks, all residents from 716 East 27th and a house east and west of the location were evacuated. While preparing to detonate the illegal explosives, 3 additional residences east of 716 East 27th were evacuated on the south side of the street. And prior to the actual detonation, additional residences on the north side of 27th Street were directed to evacuate, as well as media members directed to move further back, away from the site. To the west of the location, businesses were asked to move patrons away from the windows facing east and move pedestrians to the west side of San Pedro Street. Newton area personnel went door to door to each residence to advise of the evacuation. Now, questions have been raised regarding the use of the TCV, the Total Containment Vessel, at the location and the decision not to transport the illegal explosives from the scene. The department's Total Containment Vessel, TCV, is a truck-mounted spear designed to help protect people, property, and the surrounding area from the blast effects of a detonation of an explosive device, including fireworks. The TCV used during this incident has been in service for more than a decade, with regular maintenance and inspections. The use of the TCV, this was a 42nd incident since the vessel was placed in the department service in 2011, and the 3rd use of it in 2021, all of which occurred in the month of June. The TCV utilized is designed to safely contain the recurring blast effect of up to 15 pounds of C4 explosives. Its maximum design capacity is for a one-time detonation of 25 pounds of C4 explosive, or its equivalent. So to be clear on this, the 15-pound use is that vessel is designed that you can have such a use, it's inspected, and it can be later used again, inspected, and so forth. So it's recurring, it's not a one and done. The maximum capacity of that vessel is estimated to be 25 pounds of C4, at which time the amount of the explosive effect, is my understanding, would effectively render that unserviceable for any future use. The Department Bomb Squad protocols call for the TCV to be brought to the location of the explosives to be disposed. The TCV previously had not been used to transport explosives for later detonation based on concerns that these items could unexpectedly detonate during transportation, exposing the vehicle operator and the immediate surrounding areas to substantial risk should the TCV experience a failure. Rather, carefully planned detonations at the scene with additional safety measures such as evacuations of the surrounding residences and standoff distances have been the department's standard operating procedures. Each use of the TCV is logged with details of the use, including the locations deployed. Over the course of its history, the TCV has been used at various locations across the entire city, from West LA, Harbor, Mid-City, South Los Angeles, and the San Fernando Valley. At 7:37 Wednesday night, the detonation resulted in the catastrophic failure of the TCV, causing the blast effect that injured 17 community members and a significant property damage to the surrounding area. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, LA fire and uniformed personnel, LAPD uniformed personnel, went door to door to render aid to those injured, as well as provide emergency medical treatment to the 9 department personnel and 1 ATF agent who were also injured. As I said earlier, fortunately, there was no loss of life. 1 bomb squad personnel was hospitalized, and I'm thankful that he was subsequently released and is recovering from home. Due to the significance of this incident, and given the highly specialized nature of this particular area of police operations, I immediately requested the response of the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms National Response Team, the NRT, to independently investigate and report their findings of the cause of this catastrophic accident. I want to personally thank ATF Special Agent in Charge Monique Villegas, who responded to the scene that evening and committed her department's full resources to understanding what occurred. The NRT arrived on July 2nd and began their on-scene investigation by conducting damage assessments, collecting evidence, and conducting interviews of involved personnel and witnesses. Their on-scene investigation lasted 7 days. Going forward, ATF will now formalize a cause and origin report, including information gathered from their fieldwork, laboratory tests consisting of metallurgical analysis, and forensic testing of the blast residue. This report will be sent to the National Center for Explosive Training and Research, the NCETR, for review. It's anticipated that the final ATF report, as well as the NCETR reports, will be completed and forwarded to the department in approximately 30 days. In advance of the formal report, the following information is being provided, given the substantial and legitimate interest by the public in understanding what caused this accident to occur, as well as what steps the department has taken to ensure the accident is not repeated. I caution these are preliminary findings by the NRT and subject to further adjustments based on the results of the additional analysis, forensic testing, and the validation of this analysis and calculations. The NRT's investigation essentially formed 2 hypotheses as to the failure of the TCV and the subsequent blast impact. First, there was a defect of the TCV. Second, the net explosive weight, a term I'll define in just a moment, placed into the TCV exceeded the rated amount for that vessel, or some combination of these 2 hypotheses. The term net explosive weight, NEW, is the actual weight in pounds of explosive mixtures in comparison to TNT, which is the standard for all explosives. Calculating net explosive weights is a methodology used by explosive experts and bomb technicians. Based on information gathered to this point, it's believed that the net explosive weight placed into the TCV exceeded its rated capacity. This preliminary conclusion is based on the maximum capacity of the TCV and the difference between what the LAPD bomb squad calculated as the net explosive weight placed in the TCV and what NRT's calculations were, based on the physical weighing of the explosive materials gathered from the sampling of improvised explosives, of the improvised fireworks completed by the bomb squad. Let's talk about those for a moment. These fireworks, we're phrasing them as illegal explosives that were disposed of, were 280 M80 devices. Now, these M80 devices are similar to a quarter-sized coin envelope with a fuse. Additionally, there were 44 larger devices, the size of a soda can, again with a simple fuse. The bomb squad calculated the net explosive weight, estimating that the smaller devices contained 1/2 ounce of flash powder, and that the larger devices contained 1.5 ounces of flash powder. This estimation was based on the appearance, and a physical scale was not used. The bomb squad estimated that the total net explosive weight of the material to be disposed of was 10 pounds. A countercharge was also constructed by the bomb squad with the estimated weight of 6.5 pounds. Both items were placed into the TCV. The bomb squad estimated that the total net explosive weight was 16.5 pounds placed in the TCV. NRT's analysis included physically weighing the powder recovered during the initial bomb squad examination of one of the larger devices and one of the smaller devices. From our NRT's analysis, they calculated that each of the smaller devices contained 1.37 ounces of explosive material, and each of the larger devices contained 5 ounces of explosive material. The NRT calculation was that the total for all the devices was 30.25 pounds of net explosive weight. Additionally, based on the NRT's analysis and calculations, the NRT determined that the countercharge to be 11.77 net explosive weight. When all the illegal explosives and countercharges were placed in the TCV, the NRT calculated the total weight was just over 42 pounds of net explosive weight. The LAPD bomb squad estimation totaled 16.5 pounds. As the decision to place the actual weight of the explosives, as to the decision to estimate the actual weight of the explosives and to use an estimation in place of a physical scale, our investigation to this point has found numerous accounts by bomb technicians and others that for unknown and improvised explosive devices, including this type of firework, it's recommended to minimize the handling of these items as much as possible. As I stated in the initial hours of this terrible accident, we're committed to identifying how this occurred and ensuring it never is repeated. In that pursuit, we'll be identifying revisions to our operating protocols to expand the margin of safety for the public and our personnel alike. We can and must do better. Additionally, the involved supervisor and bomb technicians involved in this incident have been removed from the field, pending the initial training to be completed by ATF and the completion of the complaint investigation initiated as a result of this incident. To immediately address the apparent miscalculation in the weight of what material was placed in the TCV that occurred in this incident, the commanding officer of Emergency Services Division has conducted an all-hands supervisor training and implemented a new requirement for documenting field calculations, including the identification of primary and verifying officers and a supervisor for the verification of explosive materials, the calculation including the use of the physical measurements of weights whenever possible. The bomb squad standard operating procedures, that manual is being revised to address this change, as well as changes in notifications involving the commanding officer, their response requirements, disposal protocols, and the TCV protocols. This will require the presence of a commanding officer at any detonation and standardized calculations to be utilized and verified by our safety officer to ensure that our technicians are within the recommended capacity of our TCV. As I remarked earlier, I believe our people were on scene in stressful and dangerous conditions and operating with the very best intentions based on their knowledge, training, and experience gathered over the years. All have received basic and advanced training on explosives, including disposal protocols, and have been certified as required every 3 years. However, if mistakes were made in regards to established protocols, I will hold the appropriate individuals accountable. Likewise, if established protocols do not reflect best practices observed in other agencies that could or would have prevented this accident, this department will learn from others and move aggressively to adopt those practices. In addition to this examination and critical review to be completed, I've asked Commander David Kowalski to complete a top-down, bottom-up inspection of the LAPD bomb squad to assess all current practices and protocols through interviews of unit personnel and former unit members, while also conducting outreach to other agencies for best practices used to transport and dispose of explosive materials. In addition to consulting with ATF and outside bomb squads, the FBI has tentatively agreed to conduct a more comprehensive review of our systems and protocols to ensure we're in compliance with national standards. I appreciate all your patience on what is admittedly a very long statement, and my efforts have been to go into substantial details, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time. And let me invite first Assistant Special Agent in Charge Michael Hoffman for any remarks he would make. Michael.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Hoffman. I'm an Assistant Special Agent in Charge with ATF here in Los Angeles. As you may know, ATF is the federal agency with the jurisdiction, expertise, and resources to investigate large-scale, complex fire and explosive scenes. As the chief mentioned, at the request of LAPD, ATF's National Response Team, which we refer to as the NRT, responded to Los Angeles on July 1st. It was their job to determine why the explosion as opposed to the safe detonation of those fireworks occurred. The NRT was on site and processing the scene for 8 days. ATF had approximately 30 personnel from our local field division, as well as 15 NRT personnel present for the duration of that on-scene investigation. The NRT team members are comprised of certified explosive specialists, special agent bomb technicians, explosives enforcement officers, forensic chemists, engineers, medics, and other specialists. ATF conducted over 40 interviews on scene with neighbors, bomb squad personnel, other LAPD personnel, and anybody else that was present during the time of that explosion. Additionally, ATF gathered surveillance video from all the neighboring businesses and residences. The NRT members combed through that evidence, they mapped the scene, they took extensive photographs, and they mapped the entire debris field for blocks. As the chief mentioned, there were 72 exposures that sustained damage, to include 22 residences, 13 businesses, and 37 vehicles. And it was determined that over 32,000 pounds of explosives were stored in that individual's backyard. And just know this, that amount in itself probably could have taken out the entire neighborhood. And one thing that I don't want to be missed on all of this is that fireworks in general and homemade pyrotechnic explosives in particular are the most dangerous items that law enforcement and bomb squad technicians come across when it comes to rendering the items safe. NRT released the scene back to LA City on July 8th. ATF collected dozens of pieces of evidence, and those things are all being stored at various secured storage locations. Some of the evidence was submitted to our lab in Ammendale, Maryland, where it's going to be examined for explosives particulate analysis. Other items will be technically reviewed at our NCEDR, National Center for Explosives Research and Training. And then other items were sent to a metal specialist or a metallurgist who is looking for any anomalies or deficiencies in the TCV and its components. And as a matter of fact, that specialist is coming out to LA later this week to examine further items that we did not ship to him. As the chief mentioned, our preliminary findings revolve around two areas. The TCV and or some of its components failed, and or human error in the calculation of the amount of explosives that were put in the TCV. Know this, ATF is committed to getting the right answers in this investigation. Once the report is complete by the NRT, it will be peer-reviewed at NCEDR, and it will be submitted to LAPD. It will be a totally transparent process, and ATF is not going to hold anything back. I do not have a specific time frame as to when that report will be authored. However, I would estimate probably within the next 30 to 60 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Chief, can you break down then, just to clarify and to make it understandable, did I hear you correctly? Your calculations, your proposed calculations was 16 pounds. The ATF's calculations were twice that. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, 16.5 pounds that included two components. One being the illegal explosives, the second component being a countercharge. The countercharge is known explosives that the department and bomb technicians use in a configuration that allows for the detonation of the unknown or suspected explosive device. So 16.5 pounds. Now, there's a calculation to that because all explosives are not alike. In the NEW calculation or methodology, and I'm not a bomb tech, but I'm going to try to take it kind of at a high level, it's not a 1-for-1. 1 pound depends on the concentration of the type of explosives. Flash powder versus C4 is a range. TNT is an R factor of 1. A C4 or the top end is 1.6, I believe, or something. So you take a pound and you have to multiply it by that interaction, that R factor. So a pound of some explosive materials is less than a pound of net explosive weight material. Other material is at a higher concentration, means it has a higher net explosive weight than a 1 pound physical weight. The bomb technicians in this instance, x-rayed and physically spliced with robotics and took a sample out of the small device and out of the larger device. And looking visually at it by x-ray as well as the material that was extracted, estimated the weights I gave you earlier. ATF and NRT went back, conducted interviews as to that entire methodology utilized and how those estimations were gathered, and then physically weighed the two samples that we have, and then did the multiplications for what they were samples or representatives of to come to their calculations and their net explosive weight. They also looked at that with the countercharge and came to a different conclusion as well. Compounding both those together exceeded a 40-pound net explosive weight, where we believed our bomb technicians at the time in which they placed those materials into the total containment vessel believed it was 16.5 pounds. That's the aspect of preliminarily, we believe, a human error that went to the miscalculation of the amount of material going into that vessel. Now, there is also the maximum capacity of that vessel, and whether or not how that played into what was not just the failure of that vessel, but a catastrophic failure, where explosive materials and explosive blasts exceeded the ability of that vessel to contain it. Hold on, I'm left one off through here.
So then, you're talking about the total weight in there. Prior to that incident, what was the maximum that's ever been in that vessel from the LAPD?
So as I looked over the logs, I have the log of the 41, this being the 41st incident, 42nd incident, I believe I said, 42nd incident, used 2 to 3 to 5 times per year is the rate of instances. And I have on the log that I've looked at, and it may be, more information may exist outside of my review, it had the countercharge amount. That amount did not anywhere meet what's listed on there, what we placed in there by the ATF's estimation. So we have miscalculations that are significant and also that are outliers, if you will, from our initial review of the historic use of that vessel.
So you don't have any real accurate data from previous?
Not at this juncture right here. I have accurate data as to the time, place of where this vessel has been used all throughout the city, because there's been questions or concerns about why this neighborhood was exposed to this. We've seen everyone from the Pacific Palisades to the harbor, East LA, to the San Fernando Valley. We go where the explosives are found. And the protocols to this point have been to, when necessary, to safely render those materials safe, if you will, by using the total containment vessel, which is designed to contain entirely the explosion, to cause no risk to those in the immediate surrounding. Now, added safety protocols have standoff distances, including evacuations, because of circumstances that a vessel could fail. But the amount of material going in, we'll follow up with what that weight measure was previously of the, if you will, suspected material versus what we knew we put in with our countercharge. Pete.
A couple of questions, Chief. What you're indicating, at least at this point, is we had basically a very, very serious mathematics problem there, as much as assessing actual explosive content of these things work. Because you're talking from a half an ounce to 1.37 ounces and 1.5 ounces to 5 ounces. That's not a small error, that's a major error, number one. Number two, given all this, given the charge itself, given the fact photoflash is a transitional powder, you light it on fire, it flashes. You hit it with an explosive, it explodes. It turns into high explosives. Were the bomb techs aware of that? Did they take that into consideration when putting it in there to do the charge? Could they have done multiple shots? Perhaps they should have.
So what we have understand at this point is that there was a miscalculation, we believe, based on the findings of the NRT as to the physical estimation versus the physical weighing that the NRT team did with the 2 samples that were gathered. That was compounded by the number of devices that we had, because the difference between a ½ ounce and 1.37 ounces, I don't know that you and I can discern that visually. So you may be able to. But let me just finish, because you've not a commentary here, but let me just answer the question. Our personnel did a estimation based on a visual inspection, based on the X-ray, as well as capturing that material for evidence in a bag, and based on years of experience that they have, many years of experience in gathering, dealing with an unstable and a dangerous item. The tradecraft of this is that the reality is, as my understanding from a novice standpoint, is it's a very unstable. Static electricity, heat, friction, those are things that could set things off. So your handling of this is not like Play-Doh. And so to that end, when they chose to physically estimate it, we, of course, are looking at that standard and challenging that standard today, particularly because it wasn't just one device, but that such a miscalculation has a compounding effect over the size of the number of these events. With that said, that's why immediately the safeguards were put in place. Added safeguards, added documentations that goes to what the bomb tech does, what he or she articulates, the basis of their calculations, the memorializing that, to have a second officer oversee and verify, and to have a safety officer at a supervisor level also validate, to include that there was physical weighing of these devices or of this substance in determining what the net explosive weight will be.
Did a physical weighing actually take place if either one of those 2 types of items, or did it mostly merely based on a fluoroscope and an analysis by sight?
So I'm going to answer the question based on, I don't know what a fluoroscope is. Okay, so the point of this is that what I've stated is that these devices were discovered. They were leaking material. It's determined that it was unsafe because of their instability to move them. A decision was used to use a remote process of slicing into the body of the 2 samples themselves, which we believe are representative of all the devices, and to extract the material from within, and to physically inspect that and to estimate its weight, not to use a physical weight measure. The ATF, NRT, in their investigation, came back to us. We provided those 2 samples, and a scale was used, gathering these estimated weights. And from that scaled physical weighting, in concert with the number of devices, is how their calculation, in concert with what they suspect the device material is, came up with the net explosive weight. Yes?
Hi, Chief Moore, last Monday we heard repeated calls from the community for accountability from the LAPD. How do you plan to answer those calls, and is anyone facing discipline over what happened?
Well, let me answer the first question, or let me answer the last question first. Yes, people are facing potential discipline for this. What we have to determine, as when I try to include my remarks, what are our established protocols and expectations of our bomb technicians? This is and of our supervisors on scene and the oversight of this operation. This is highly technical work. It is not. This is not tradecraft that one simply learns out of a book or from passing from one to another. And there are standards and there are protocols. If established standards and protocols were not met, including the actions of the bomb technicians or the supervisors, then certainly discipline and consequences for that must occur. That is the good order. That is what there is accountability, and there must be. At the same time, if our protocols and our established operating procedures provide for instance, the use of the TCV on that site, the use of physical weights and estimation, or physical estimations of weights in place of physical weighing because of concerns for safety of our personnel, we want to pursue that. We want to look at those standards and say, are those standards the best reflection of best practices today? Do they strike the right balance? But if our folks followed those protocols, I'm not going to discipline people for following the rules. I'm going to hold people accountable for when they don't follow the rules. But we also have to critically look at this, and we're critically looking at our own operation. What are our standards? This unit is known throughout the world and is often referenced for training, insight, and awareness of how to conduct its operations. Clearly, this failure has identified, in my view, some shortfalls. Now, should we have anticipated those in advance? One can always argue, looking back, well, why didn't you have this level of documentation? Why did you not, double check the math? Why did you not look at past use and say, boy, this is a really large charge. Should we separate this and do something else? There's a lot of stress involved in this incident. This was a hot day. This was an event where they put fans in order to try to cool these fireworks from going off. This is not a stable laboratory environment. The dangers to everyone involved, not just to those bomb techs, but to the citizenry and community, were real. And we've seen it here in Los Angeles. So I will hold people accountable for those that fail to follow our expectations, and I'll also protect them from when they follow our rules and they follow our standards, and we have failed them, or we failed the community because they have not met the needs of today, that we're committed to meet those needs and meet this moment.
To be clear, the initial inspection was visual only. It did not involve scales.
That's correct.
Okay. And is that the established protocol you talked about? And how reliable are those kinds of assessments?
Okay, let me answer that question first. Okay, so at this early juncture, the briefings I've had is that from interviews, is that our protocols allow for physical estimation, visual estimation, rather than a physical weight being borne by a scale. Now, I've asked, and this investigation will include, what are our written protocols? What are the trainings that both basic and advanced training, as to those training guides and curriculums, as to this issue of using a physical weight or holding something and estimating how much it weighs. Pete may understand the difference between a half ounce and an ounce and 3/7. However, what does that training allow for? Does it allow for that type of estimation? Which if the bomb tech engaged in it, because that was allowable, then that's a standard I've got to look at and say, well, an error was made here. Clearly, the outcome was catastrophic. We've got to change that standard. So this is the balance that we're going to strike.
Second question is, you mentioned the TCB had been used multiple times over the years. Does that mean there was detonation, that it was tested detonation, or simply transfer?
No, each instance, 41 previous instances, was to go to a scene, place material, suspected material into the vessel, along with a countercharge, and to detonate it at that location, and no failure occurred, no damage to, or injury to any property occurred in each of those 41 prior instances.